Welcome back to the Illinois Shines Mentorship Program. My name is Mike Tancredi. I'm a Senior Marketing Manager, and this is the 8th session of this series called Program Resources and Ongoing Opportunities. We're so glad to have you here, and I'm going to advance to the next slide, and I want to introduce my colleague, Jess Blue. Jess?
Thanks, Mike. My name is Jess Blue. I'm the Community Solar Sector Strategist with the Program Administrator, and happy to be back here presenting for the Mentorship Program Series. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to start off as we normally do with an icebreaker. So if you could all please use the chat to state your name and company, as well as answer the question on the slide here. Have you requested and do you utilize an official certified EEC AV badge from the program in your marketing efforts? And I do want to state, if this is something you are not familiar with, this is actually found in the Consumer Protection Handbook. So any certified EEC may request that the program administrator provide an EEC logo for marketing. And of course, only a certified EEC may use this, but did just want to present that for those if you didn't know what this was. But yeah, let's see what we have in the chat.
Yeah, we can go ahead and furnish these to Jess's point. So just reach out to Connor or any of the team with your AV number, your EEC number, and we'll get a custom badge made for you and delivered. So a little bit of a prompt in case you didn't know about it. Thanks for that, Jess.
Great. Thanks, Mike. All right, I think with that, we can move on. All right, so as mentioned earlier, today's presentation is our 8th and final presentation in the mentorship series. We do want to extend our appreciation to all of you that have participated and have taken the time out of your days to join these past few presentations. And just want to say thank you. This allows us to further develop the mentorship offering and understand opportunities for informing future program resources. And as always, a survey and email will be sent out afterwards for your feedback, as well as a copy of the presentation and slides uploaded in your SharePoint folder for future reference. And with that, I think we can move on to the agenda. So first up, we're going to cover some approved vendor forums and areas for support. We're then going to dive into a program resources overview with an overview of the website, moving into program announcements and what those look like. And then lastly, leave some time at the end for any questions. Next slide, please. So first, approved vendor forums and support. I'm going to go ahead and be giving an overview of this. Next slide, please. So we have forums hosted by the program administrator on topics for approved vendor input and further discussion, both in the form of working groups as well as approved vendor roundtables. So the first working group I want to highlight is the Consumer Protection Working Group. This occurs monthly to discuss market trends, best practices, consumer education, updates to program requirements and documents, and other consumer protection issues for both Illinois Shines and for Illinois Solar for All. We've also had a disclosure form application programming interface, also known as API working group. We've had these working groups formed for both community solar and distributed generation disclosure form API development. These were used to gain AV and designee input, understand usage, develop requirements, and also provide support. And then lastly, the roundtables. So we have held 2 roundtables of approved vendor input. This is designed to solicit specific input to the sector. I'm sure a few of you are familiar and have been a part of those. And we really just want to understand opportunities for the program to better support participating entities. And so all of these working groups, as mentioned, are highlighted in weekly program announcements. So look out for those if you're interested in participating. Next slide, please. So some other opportunities for approved vendor support here. The first item are the help guides. Mike is going to be showing us later in the walkthrough on the website where to find these, but these are under the AV and designee resources menu. And these are resources for specific topics and guidance. And we do plan to have more one-pagers coming out in 2024. So these include portal guides, anything from password reset, a walkthrough of the applications, and information on batching. We also have help guides on disclosure forms, rec contracts, the annual report, as well as an annual checklist of program requirements. Also on the website, you can find Program Year webinars, and these are under the vendor updates menu. So these are recordings and slides available of past webinars and are really useful, can be a really useful reference and would recommend reviewing these as well. They include topics such as the minimum equity standard compliance plan and waiver request, the annual report and delivery or rec evaluation, as well as the new disclosure form that launched this past program year, and just an overview of the 2023-2024 program year. Next slide, please. So some additional areas here, as I'm sure most of you are familiar with, we have the program administrator general contact. Approved vendors are encouraged to email or call the program administrator with any questions at admin@illinoisshines.com or the number listed here. And we also have opportunities for sector strategist one-on-one support. So approved vendors can set up one-on-one meetings with a sector strategist, either one time or reoccurring as needed for any kind of support. And we do have the contacts listed here on the side. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with Connor as the EEC sector strategist, but we also have other sector strategists such as myself available for the other categories as well. And then lastly is office hours. So we have availability weekly on Wednesdays. These are from 10 to 11 a.m. Central Time for approved vendors or designees who have programmatic questions, project application inquiries, having technical difficulties with the program portal, or just seek support in resolving challenges. And you can look at the program announcement to find the link to these sessions.
Thank you, Jess. Yeah, I'm really pleased to present the next couple of sections, including a program resources overview and then announcements. I've got a few slides, and then we're going to do some show and tell with the website. But I think the key message is that the program and its program administrator are continually considering new opportunities to serve our participating vendors and designees and help ensure their successful, compliant participation in the program. So glad to offer these, and with your help, we're making those better. So want to just kind of give an overview here. Again, our main priority is your successful compliant participation and to provide the valuable information and updates necessary to achieve that through the program. And we've got, in terms of stakeholders, we've got our vendors and designees, we've got our consumers, we've got our community groups and communities, we've got legislators and other interested parties. So earlier this year, we undertook a brand refresh of Illinois Shines, and the goal there wasn't just a fresh appearance, but it really was to reflect the program's promise to consumers and participants and other stakeholders to invite their participation in Illinois' ambitious clean energy economy goals. And one of those objectives was to deliver a new website that made that a bit easier. Formerly, the program had a couple websites, one that was really geared more toward vendors, that was IllinoisABP.com, and one geared more toward consumers, IllinoisShines.com. But they had some gaps in them and some discrepancies between the information, and the goal had always been to harmonize. So we were able, including feedback from vendors, from roundtables and more, to develop a new site that launched in late July, designed to be more inclusive, organized, and resource-rich to better serve all of you, to be more intuitive in finding the materials and understanding them. So we've got a lot of dynamic materials, and they're geared toward both prospective and existing consumers and vendors and other interested stakeholders. We want to speak to everybody that's interested in participating or considering participation in Illinois Shines. I want to just review a kind of an overview, and then we'll dive right into looking at the site itself. But the main partition here is a track of information for prospective and existing customers and other stakeholders with some of the shared interest areas, and then a rich area of details, resources, and updates for prospective and existing AVs and designees. I have no doubt that the individuals on this call are spending a lot of time at the website. But really quickly, we'll walk through and you'll see how that's organized. We have a section around solar and Shines basics. We've got people needing to understand the fundamentals of solar and how it is generated and how the Illinois Shines program works, how it's structured, some of the available opportunities, some of the considerations in going solar, the incentive model with renewable energy credits, and more. We then want to take folks on the continued journey to explore solar and to understand RECs more fully, how those renewable energy credits work, to review the project types in depth, to explore financing options available for DG customers, to invite prospective customers to evaluate their circumstances and consider some of the relevant questions to ask vendors themselves and specific AVs and designees they may be in contact with. We've got a rich section on consumer resources with educational materials, and as you'll see, we'll point out these have great value to our participating vendors as well too. But along with the program's equity requirements coming from the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, consumer protection is one of the other cornerstones of this program and one of the key distinguishing features of Illinois Shines. So a lot of consumer protection materials will drill down on that hub, and also how stranded customers whose vendor may be unwilling or unable to complete a project can access help from the program. We've got a reports and data section, which again is for all stakeholders, and everything from updates to the block capacity dashboard to detailed information on project applications that developers are interested in, a project map, and a lookup tool to see the status of DG projects. Moving over to the vendor side, again, this is about what it takes to be involved in the program as a vendor or designee, some of those requirements, processes, and more. We talk about the equity accountability system and the minimum equity standards to fulfill CJIS equity provisions and prevailing wage. We then get into what in some ways is the heart of the vendor side in terms of AV and designee resources. So program documents, individual project category hubs specific to the type of projects you're working on, consumer protection information geared toward vendors to help clarify some items of interest and necessity, portal updates, and then we're going to share today even a new section, a new page we've added breaking out the portal help guides and vendor FAQs. We then have a section with all the vendor updates, housing all of the announcements. We'll take a moment there. We have a calendar, program calendar, key dates, deadlines, the webinars that Jess referred to, and one more link to the block capacity dashboard. And then finally, we've got an About tab, and we have a shared goal with all of you to grow the program, to increase understanding, and that could be with legislators, media, consumers, communities, and more. So we're sharing key summary information about the program. We're also working on some new materials there and more. So why don't we then dive into it, and we'll spend a little more time at the website. So I'll do that now. All right. Hope everybody can see my screen at illinoisshines.com. So again, we'll walk through this with some pace so that you can see exactly what we've got here. I think the key thing to orient you off the start is that the white tab at the top is really the vendor tab and that journey. So we'll actually get to that second, but that's distinguished from the blue tab here, which generally is more oriented toward consumers and customers. Again, you may find valuable resources here, and we'll spend some time on some of them across the consumer-oriented side of the site. But we did want to bring a bit of a hierarchy. As I mentioned, we combined a couple of sites. So let's get into it. The homepage, which you probably have spent some time with, is really a welcome and an introduction to Shines, and at a very high level, starting to explain some of the benefits, participate, some quick links really. So some things that become available. It does provide some context for the program and its important role in helping the state achieve its ambitious clean energy goals, including 100% by 2050 that you're all making a big impact on. We want to talk through some of the benefits of solar, and regardless of your role in the program, we want to help clarify some of the environmental, economic, and financial benefits that the program is bringing to the state with job creation and other opportunity and more. We want to kind of introduce people to the bifurcated opportunities to participate in the program, which are either DG or community solar programs, and then some other quick links at a very high level. Again, these will be found elsewhere, so we'll spend some time within the site finding those. The next area I wanted to start to introduce you to is Solar and Shines Basics. And this section is about with the subpages, doing a few things. A lot of people may not be familiar with the concept of solar energy and how PV solar panels work, so we want to demystify that a little bit and share some of that information. But pretty quickly, knowing that people may install solar in Illinois or access it without participating in the program, we want to talk about the specific incentives that Illinois Shines provides. And we've tried to create a pretty simple guide here to the REC incentive model to introduce RECs, to explain that vendors are the counterparties to the utilities, and then a little bit about the prices being set each year and the number of RECs available toward meeting the state's clean energy goals over time. So we want to start to orient people toward how that's working. This is a video we borrowed from another resource. Over time, this website will have more and more resources, explainers, animations, utilities to help people walk through some of that as well too. But we found a really great video that generally explains the concept of RECs. We then again want to share some of the key benefits, and as the journey continues and things may start to connect for people, we want to kind of spell those out a little bit more. And then this section ends by introducing the 6 primary categories in the program. Returning then to the menu, the last option that we've got in here is just a bit of technical, and technical items are addressed by some of the frequently asked questions at the website as well too. But there are a few conceptual and technical terms here that we want to share so people can start to understand the language of solar installation. The next tab is where things start to really pick up for information in terms of helping people explore. So if they've at this point theoretically been enticed by the opportunity of going solar with Illinois and the program if they're interested. We want to continue to orient them towards some of these projects and just start to real gently explain some of the distinctions in the project structure and size and the opportunities to participate. We've begun to add some materials here specific to the sectors so that if they want, they can stop right here to learn more about schools or EEC or more. And again, bringing them back to the two main project types that are available through the program, regardless of the structure. We then have some in-depth walkthroughs in each of the sections. So we want to invite people, as the screen shows, to explore distributed generation. We know that some people may have an option whether to choose the DG or CS route. And for those that do, we want to give them a cleaner breakout of those possibilities. That can start with understanding the different goals and considerations, their current energy bill, how long they'll be there. We have a lot of rooftop and a lot of ground mount in Illinois. So starting to think about that and their particular circumstances. We then want to, in service of having informed customers, and again, keeping in mind, solar will be one of the very largest investments they may make to their home. So we want to have them investigate this thoroughly. And for all of our vendors that are working so hard to comply with the program and to deliver on Illinois Shines, we want to help connect customers and invite them to choose the vendors that they feel most comfortable working with, to compare bids and opportunities that may be structured differently by different vendors, to consider getting references and take advantage of vendors that are leaving high marks with their other customers, and also to understand some of their rights. We are developing a Going Solar with Illinois Shines handbook, by the way, which will outline a bit more of this too in a longer form document, but the site aims to introduce people to some of these concepts and the full scope of things we'd like them to consider. When they may get to the point of requesting a bid, we want to really kind of remind them how many different kinds of considerations may be involved, including what the project will yield, start and finish dates, cost, depending on whether they purchase or lease or power purchase, maintenance requirements, other costs, what if they move, what if they want to transfer the system, and more. And keeping in mind, we're looking at 15 or 20-year contracts in the program. So we want to ask people to have their eyes wide open for what they're looking for in a bid. We have some sample questions that toward the goal of more informed customers, but also I think this is a valuable area for our vendors to look at and be ready to handle these kind of questions that customers very wisely would ask of the vendor. So from the structure of the contract to the system, to the equipment, to ongoing maintenance and the life of the system and more, people may start to ask about battery storage. So just kind of moving through a few of these, there are a lot of questions. And again, I think this is a really good primer for all of our participants to feel good about answering these questions as we train customers to do them. I think that it's fair to say that the better educated customers are and more familiar, that's going to result in more successful programs and projects all the way around. So we wanted to share that. Again, in the case of DG, 3 distinct financing options that you're all familiar with and have come up earlier in the mentorship program, from system purchase to lease to a power purchase agreement. And just a simple table here that outlines some of the distinctions across some key considerations. Lastly, one of our goals is to connect customers with vendors. And so we want to lead them right to the list to find an AV or designee. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Really in parallel is the Explore Community Solar page. So it's structured the same way, but given that you wouldn't be hosting the system, but rather drawing from a community solar project, there's a few distinctions there. But we do want to give people a financial overview, understanding there's a lot to comprehend on the contracts and some of the rights, responsibilities, terms, costs, and more. So we want to orient people to that, how that will work in terms of bill credits on their utility bill. But pretty quickly then we want to orient customers toward the idea that there are different community solar projects. They may have the good fortune to choose from a couple. So if that's the case, we want them to, again, talk to vendors, receive customer references, and understand their rights. Again, this also helps with their own education so that they can go into things fully understanding. And then we've got a slate of questions that are tweaked and in some cases more specific to community solar. As you all know, there are two different kinds of community solar in the program, traditional and community-driven community solar. You all may be developing projects in both categories, so we want people to understand that. Depending where it's located, maybe drawing from different utility regions. And again, some of the other items that are familiar, both categories, the contract length, or in the case of CS, their subscriber share, the subscription basis, rate basis, forgive me, the fee variability, termination fees of their contract, and more. So again, we want our customers to be asking the right questions, but we do also recommend that our vendors have their answers ready for these questions toward satisfying those inquiries and hopefully moving forward. And then again, a goal to very quickly connect people to identified projects. You may have been solicited to update us on projects that have been in development. We do also have a bit of a nod here to the Illinois Solar for All, which is also overseen by the Illinois Power Agency. So a different program, but many of our vendors, which may include some on this call, participate in both programs. So we want to make that available to people. So that's a key tab, but last but not least, is we then want to connect people to the kind of vendors that are serving the program, from approved vendors, but also our designees. And again, we know that some of you may be doing it all soup to nuts, from developing projects to building and installing them and more. But we've also got people that are doing parts of that are rec brokers or aggregators or more. But we want to very quickly link people to reports that are continually updated with vendor information that are available here. And again, emphasizing that these are approved vendors, have met the rigorous screening requirements, and that's part of the key value proposition of the program, that you've got vetted vendors here already available to you. We then talk a little bit about designees. I know some of our vendors are also designees, so depending on the programs and the opportunities, and those fall into a few categories, as you know: disclosure form designees, subscriber agents for CS, marketing or sales designees, and installer designees. And we then also have access to the designee report. So we're really trying to walk people kind of towards solutions, understand those projects, ask the right questions, understand their own goals and the options available to them, and then connect them with vendors. I want to mention that we're working to develop some more dynamic reports here that may even allow people to soon search on geolocation or zip code, so to find vendors in their area. So we not only want them to find vendors that meet their needs or developing projects that are of interest to them, but confirm their availability and proximity to customers. Okay, I'll start to move through the rest of the site here. This is a key section, again, I mentioned, along with the equity provisions of the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. Consumer resources, consumer protection are pillars and distinguishing features of Illinois Shines. So this is a key section, and I do want to actually spend a moment on a key resource that I think you'll all be interested in if you're not familiar. And in our consumer education subsection, we've, of course, got brochures and other resources. These are brochures from the program that are appended to disclosure forms, including the DG and community solar brochures as applicable. For DG projects where a financial incentive is being passed on to the customer, there's also a guide to going solar. So take a look at these. I want to point out these are available in Spanish language and also ADA accessible versions. By the way, we aim to get the site translated with a toggle into Spanish and other languages in the future. I want to share these and then some terminology and other resources to familiarize customers, including some links and some external sites that can explain some concepts that they learn about in the program. But let me go back, and I want to spend just a moment on the disclosure form deep dive section. So you've all heard from the consumer protection team and what they do and their rigorous advocacy on behalf of consumers and strongest actors in the program who are adhering to all the program rules. We've developed a tool at the website with the agency's guidance called Disclosure Form Deep Dives. And what these allow is for a given project type, and again offered in English and will soon have Spanish, is to elect a particular disclosure form that's applicable to the project type. And then furthermore, you can choose a subset based on the type of purchase in the case of the DG. And there are some distinctions for utilities. But what this does is really does a visual walkthrough of different parts of the disclosure forms section. So again, whether you're a newer vendor or just want to brush up, or you're a consumer that hasn't seen one before, we have these pop-outs that explain what these sections are about and aim to remove any confusion about what may be covered different areas. So we walk through the totality of the disclosure form. We have some key notes here that people can look and fill out. You may be getting questions from your consumers about what a section is about or what it includes. There are some sections of the website, of the disclosure form that use some standing rates, the price to compare, or the utility rates, and those are going in here. So to help people understand what's generating the data in their particular disclosure form. You can see in this area on the estimated savings, there are some distinctions between the different utilities, and these are common on the deep dives to see that language there and maybe jump out to the utility site to see more. So offering a deeper understanding of the metrics that are part of the calculation, subscription size in the case of CS, and more. And just a reminder here that the disclosure form should be understood before signing, and that the disclosure form, of course, must be signed before a contract's available. So again, I want to point out that these deep dive tools are available for each of the project types and with some utility specific variation, and real helpful tool whether you're a vendor or a consumer. Just a little more time here on the consumer side. The Consumer Protection Hub is a key area. We want to introduce consumers, very important in Illinois, to understand the priority and the rigor around consumer protection. Jess made a mention with regard to the AV badges about the Consumer Protection Handbook. So a number of resources they designed to guide your compliant operation of the program, marketing and sales behaviors, guideline, training of your own teams and those of designees. We will walk through just a moment some of these other assets and resources in the hub. So quickly there, the program does maintain a consumer complaints report, which you can see here, which logs complaints, and as the team shared in a prior session, those are investigated and vendors are contacted to understand more so that we can understand if a violation has occurred or not, and a determination can be made there. So we do log those complaints report, and those roll up into an annual complaints report. If there is a finding that a warning of a potential program violation has occurred, or a clear violation, those will make its way into the program violations report, and these will share the details on warning letters and suspension letters for AVs and their designees, including the terms of that and the navigation of the proceeding, if you will, toward the period that applies to, and the resolution and the latest status. We will also be exploring dynamic reports here so that consumers may quickly identify if a vendor they've been contacted by or have reached out to is currently in a suspended status. So again, for the good of the program and all the participants, that's clear and easy to find. We do have a glossary of some terms that are of importance to understand. Another resource alluded to earlier was the help for stranded customers. And again, there may be DG customers whose approved vendor is or designee unable or unwilling to complete the project. That could be for a number of reasons. Either they've failed to meet program requirements or suspended, or they've gone out of business or limited operations or otherwise left the market. So we do want to start to connect consumers with vendors that may be available to help, and designees. to support their stranded project. And I want to highlight this area because it may be of interest to you all as well too, to consider if you might be interested to be available as a resource here. So we've got some different circumstances and details, and want to request that you get familiar with this if you're not already, if you have interest in potentially supporting stranded customers. And then just briefly in the rest of the section, we do, as many of you know, recognize some participants here, have a consumer protection working group that's led monthly, that's attended by the agency and both its Illinois Shines and Solar for All program administrators, and addressing topics of interest, really a wide breadth from customer disclosures and contracts and incentives and more, and some of the topics that come up. And it's really been a fruitful working group to hear from our vendors and our community organizations and customers as well too. So that meets monthly, the first Friday of the month, and you can see the detail there. And then afterward, the minutes and notes are posted. Finally, we operate a complaint center on behalf of the program, and this allows us to collect information from consumers who are considering or may wish to file a complaint, to share some information which we can then begin to process and again fact find and reach out to involved vendors and more. Customers who also have the opportunity to file a complaint with the Illinois Commerce Commission, as well as the Illinois Attorney General CP division. So that information is provided here. Again, our goal is to work toward investigation and resolution. So I wanted to share that section with you really briefly. We have a couple sections that are being updated as we speak. One is, and we expect to have more going forward, are really consumer-oriented program updates, announcements that impact that side of things versus a more technical program update that you're all familiar with, and then consumer FAQs. So we're going to be restoring those shortly to the website. Pick up a little speed here. I just want to then move into the reports and data area of the site. Again, there's a few key reports here that you may be very familiar with. The block capacity dashboard, of course, across the groups, group A and B by service territories, and then across project types, is going to show you the allocation of capacity, either capacity allocated to prior waitlisted programs, projects from the prior program year, to this year's allocated, batch, submitted, or available capacity. There's a more in-depth chart which shows both the initial capacity that was allocated for the category, but then upon satisfaction of a wait list that starts the program year, remaining capacity and more. And then finally, some detailed data here as well to an alternative to the capacity table. So this is, we know, of key importance to developers in when they submit applications and more, and what's available. And then finally, I want to point you to the wait lists that you may be familiar with. And the wait lists have projects that upon their review, when capacity becomes available, become first eligible for new capacity in the following program year, or in the case of any attrition. This is really for historical reference, this older one, but you can see our active wait lists across those project category groups. I also want to point you to the detailed project application reports. This gives you a status on application by project category and group, and roughly the window of application review that the program administrator is currently processing. So you can take a look there, and we'll talk about the lookup tool in just a moment. And this will get populated earlier today. So this is a resource. The other key feature of this page is that we've got detailed project application reports. So this report I'm hovered over right now shows Part 1 applications that have been submitted, and with all of the detail that's outlined here in this segment. Part 2 then shows the ICC approved applications. You can download those. And then Report 2. Report 3 then shows Part 2 application reviews following energization and approval there. So these are important tools to understand the kind of projects that are being developed, submitted, and approved. Those really roll up into an interactive project map that you can take a look at here, and again, sort and sift by number of features from vendor to the county, zip, or application ID, you can see some of the filters here. And this map is going to dynamically change to show you where projects are being developed and or at various stages of application or energization, as the case may be. So I want to share that. And then lastly, a relatively recent addition to the website is the ability to look up project status for DG tools. So with either the application ID or the disclosure form ID and the customer email address, the status of the program administrator's review of an application can be looked up. Okay, I'm going to return to About in just a moment, but what I want to do now is spend a few important minutes on the vendor designee side. Again, probably something you're very well familiar with, but on the off chance you aren't or can learn some more areas today, that's what we're here for. So the first section is really about vendors and designees and understanding the role of vendors and designees in the program, what that means, how to go about becoming an approved vendor or designee, but also importantly, the renewal of an application. And I will just point out that there's been a recent request for feedback on that application, so direct your attention to that. But this is how we continue to vet vendors and properly renew them, confirm their active involvement in the program, and orient you toward the requirements of being an AV and or designee. And of course, prior session reviewed an annual checklist of some of those requirements. We've got a special dedicated page here to what an equity eligible contractor is, and that'll take us over to that page, which we'll jump to in just a moment. And with that said, we've streamlined this page a little bit. We want to help individuals understand the program's goals around inviting equity eligible contractor participation in the program. These really flow from the full equity accountability system that we'll review in just a moment. But we wanted to simplify the steps and what you can expect. Many on the call may already be EECs, and I know at least one is indicated in progress or on a potential pathway to becoming certified. The process is here, and including some materials you can familiarize yourself with to get all of that data ready for a rapid submission and ideally a rapid approval. So we wanted to share that. It's an area of special focus that has its own dedicated sector strategist. And we also link to some important resources published by the agency and DCEO, including the Energy Workforce Equity Portal that's designed to connect vendors with equity eligible persons to build a project workforce. So outside of the SHINES program, but a important initiative under the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. And again, then we've got information on becoming a certified EEC, the definitions of EEC eligibility and attestation you'll be asked to complete as part of that application. And then finally, some information on designees. The last thing I want to point out is some of the approved job training programs that the program recognizes as qualifying for equity eligible certification. So I want to share a little bit more about that. Spend just a moment here, but an important one on the equity accountability system, which again, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act amended the IPA Act to expand priority access to equity eligible persons and companies and contractors for the clean energy economy. So again, the goal here is to invite historically excluded communities and workforce to the program and to share in the growth of the clean energy economy and the state's goals toward an equitable, clean future. Some of the key features here that you're familiar with are the minimum equity standard, which represent an escalating percentage of workforce comprising of equity eligible persons, the establishment of the equity eligible contractor category that many are familiar with, and requirements for competitive procurement processes across the activities of the agency. So this is an important resource to understand the EAS and that umbrella that it contributes so much to the equity provisions of the program. We have some webinar resources and some calls for stakeholder feedback that have been part of the EAS. And most recently, we have updated information about the advance of capital rubric and rationale that was published last week. So being familiar with that. And lastly, there's a link to the Prevailing Wage Hub that links out to the Illinois Department of Labor and some external links. Okay, I want to move quickly then to another important area, which is the AVN designee resources. This is in some ways the key area that some people will spend a lot of time on, which is the program documents that govern the guidelines and rules of the program. So the long-term renewable resources procurement plan, we talked about that at the top. Again, that is driving the development then of a program guidebook and consumer protection handbook, which become the rules of the road for the program. So depending on the approval of the plan that satisfies the provisions of the law, guidebook and CP handbook are key source documents to navigate your understanding of the program and its requirements and how to do that. We also cover rec contracts here. These are updated and again vary by year and term of 15 or 20 years. We have spreadsheets that show the latest rec prices that are factoring into your disclosure forms and offers, and then rec payment calculators. And then we've got a disclosure form section here with the current disclosure form templates, archival versions, the average retail rate and price to compare inputs. And then a couple of important documents. One is the circumstances requiring new disclosure form issuance and signature. The other limited exceptions to account holder as signatory. We've got some brochures, we've got some contract requirements, and we've got some other documents you've seen elsewhere. A key new addition to the website was the project category hubs. And again, you can find these by sector and toggle around. And the idea here is to aggregate some of the information specific to each of the sector. Those include items that you're seeing in the announcements, and also some category specific resources, discussion, stakeholder feedback, rationale documents, and more. So you can see those. I want to then as shared earlier, there is a consumer protection requirements and resources section again. So while I do suggest you spend some time on the consumer side of that, this site drills down just a little bit more on consumer protection requirements from a vendor perspective, some of your commitments under net metering credits and the acknowledgement of net metering availability, and then aggregating some of the disclosure form resources all in one place. So webinars, samples, materials, and more. We have a section here dedicated to portal updates, and that includes the portal development roadmap and also updated items that appear in the weekly announcement items. And we have a new page as of this morning, actually, where we've broken out some of the program help guides and application tips. So these are PDFs, video walkthroughs by topic. So you can see disclosure form help guides, disclosure form walkthrough videos, rec contract help guides. We have a growing roster there, portal help guides, and additional help guides, and want to direct your attention to each of the sector strategists and how you can reach them by project category. So got a couple more things I want to cover. One is a vendor FAQ section, and this is a robust area organized by topic and with expandable questions. You can see when they've last been updated, but a host of important topics from the technical to the programmatic to compliance and other requirements, some project-specific FAQs as well too. We welcome your input, by the way, on this section and others if additional resources may be of help, and we want to figure out the best ways to furnish those. So they could be guides, they could be FAQs, and more. And lastly, I want to move to the vendor update section. It's a key section, and it's got a few key components. The first is program updates. I think nearly everybody here, if not everyone, receives program announcements. We'll spend just a moment on those. And these are all cataloged here. Again, with the project category hubs, we want to reduce burden to strictly rely on announcements to go find items you've read. With that said, we do strongly encourage and expect people to read announcements in full, but we're trying to better use the website to park information. And we'll talk about announcements in just a moment. Vendor forums and key dates is a continuously updated calendar. Jess talked about some of the forums. The announcements are full of deadlines, due dates, and more. Things like office hours, this session, and others are included. And we also aggregate stakeholder feedback calls here. Program Year webinars was mentioned earlier by Jess. And these are a growing roster of all of the webinars, which typically include a recording, the slides, some score results, and Q&A. So you can rewind on these, including some helpful start of the program year resources and more. We've got some random selection events specific to TCS and more, some real operational areas related to annual reports, disclosure forms, or more, some portal guides, and more, and then just a loop back to the block capacity dashboard. Lastly, I mentioned the About section, and we're going to continue to grow this toward growing the program and including information for other interested parties that can help us promote all that's going on with Illinois Shines and more. So with that said, I want to then jump back to a slide as we move through the late stages of the presentation. And is everybody seeing this slide again? Yeah, is that good? Okay, yeah. Let me just make sure. Okay, all right. Really quickly on program announcements. There are a variety of program announcements that we make available. You're probably most familiar with the weekly the weekly program announcements, and they have new and updated information, category specific news, requirements, deadlines, calls for input, and more. We are continuing to organize that to group information and topics of interest to alert you to new information, what's new at the website, and more. So those will continue to improve. We have special announcements that are often key announcements from the agency, release of key information, deadlines, and reminders for very big events. So look for those as standalone announcements. And then finally, we do some segmented announcements. They could be for forums like this or some of our working groups and more.